Relax. It's not like that jungle hair belongs in a real hospital anyway. Dr. Ryan Caldwell's voice sliced through the room as the clippers roared to life inches from Rachel Bennett's scalp, the vibration crawling through her skull before the first brutal pass ripped through her hair. Rachel's fingers locked against the counter, her reflection unflinching while Dr. Ethan Whitaker pressed down on her shoulder with cold authority. "Hold still," he said, voice smooth with contempt. "We're fixing what you couldn't." Thick curls fell in heavy clumps, scattering across the tile as Dr. Caldwell tilted his phone, grinning. "Look at that, clean already." Rachel didn't cry, didn't fight. Her silence was still, her breathing measured, controlled. Because neither man understood the truth in that moment. They weren't just humiliating a nurse. They were capturing the evidence that would end everything they'd built. Before continuing, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because the next story is one you can't miss. Darkness cloaked Mercy Regional Hospital in Atlanta as Rachel Bennett walked through the sliding glass doors. Her shoes clicked against the polished floor, each step purposeful. The surgical recovery unit sprawled ahead, a maze of rooms and corridors where her new career would begin. Carolyn Hayes stood waiting at the nurse's station, her gray hair pulled back severely, her white uniform crisp. "Right on time," she said, giving Rachel a quick nod. "Let's get you oriented before the morning rush." From the corner of her eye, Rachel noticed two doctors watching her arrival. They leaned against the counter, coffee cups in hand, trading whispers and smirks. Dr. Ethan Whitaker's perfectly pressed lab coat and carefully styled hair screamed authority. Beside him, Dr. Ryan Caldwell's lanky frame slouched with casual disdain. "First stop, supply rooms," Carolyn said, leading the way. "You'll need to memorize where everything is. When a patient crashes, there's no time to hunt around." "Of course," Rachel replied, mentally mapping the layout. She'd studied the unit's floor plan for days, determined to hit the ground running. Well, came a smooth voice behind them. Dr. Whitaker had followed, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Our new recovery nurse. Think you can keep up? This isn't like your old community clinic." "I'm confident in my abilities, Dr. Whitaker," Rachel answered evenly. "I specialized in post-surgical care during my residency." Dr. Caldwell snorted. "Might want to do something about that hair first. That's a lot of volume for a sterile floor." He gestured at her carefully styled natural curls. "We have standards here." "My hair meets all professional and safety requirements," Rachel said, keeping her voice steady despite the heat rising in her chest. "I take sterile procedure very seriously." Carolyn's eyes narrowed. "If you gentlemen don't mind, I need to finish orientation before rounds." Throughout the shift, Rachel threw herself into patient care with focused intensity. She checked vitals, changed dressings, and adjusted medication drips with practiced efficiency. Her movements were sure, her documentation meticulous. "Such gentle hands," murmured Mrs. Henderson, an elderly woman recovering from hip surgery. "You've got a real gift, honey. I feel safe with you here." Rachel smiled, adjusting the woman's pillows. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. Just let me know if you need anything else." But every small victory seemed to draw unwanted attention. During rounds, Dr. Whitaker questioned her choice of anti-nausea medication in front of the entire team. "Are you sure that's the right protocol? Maybe check your manual again." "The dosage is correct per current guidelines," Rachel responded, pulling up the reference on the computer. "Would you like to review it together?" "Just making sure you're thorough," he said with a cold smile. "Can't be too careful with new staff." Dr. Caldwell jumped in. "Don't be so sensitive. We're just trying to help you learn the ropes." His laugh echoed down the hallway. "Right, Ethan?" Throughout the shift, the jabs continued. When Rachel questioned a medication order that seemed unusually high, Dr. Caldwell rolled his eyes. "Look who thinks she knows better than the attending." When she efficiently handled a patient's dropping blood pressure, Dr. Whitaker appeared to check her work, making a show of reviewing every step she'd taken. Other nurses kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact. The message was clear. This was normal, and no one wanted to get involved. As the shift progressed, Carolyn pulled Rachel into the supply room, speaking in low tones. "Listen carefully. Those two have a reputation. They love pushing people around, especially new nurses. They act charming with administration and patients' families. But don't let that fool you." "I've noticed," Rachel said quietly. "They've driven good people out of here," Carolyn continued. "They play these games, then claim everyone else is too sensitive or can't take a joke. Watch your back." Rachel nodded, her jaw set. "Thank you for telling me." When her shift ended, darkness had fallen again outside the hospital windows. Rachel walked to her car, her shoulders tight with tension. The day's interactions played through her mind, the subtle digs, the public corrections, the measuring stares. but underneath the unease was a core of steel. She hadn't worked this hard, earned her degree, and built her skills to be driven away by bullies in white coats. She would return, do her job well, and refuse to let them shake her confidence. Her mother hadn't raised her to back down from a challenge. As she drove home through the quiet streets, Rachel's determination grew stronger with each mile. The following shift painted the hospital corridors in harsh fluorescent light as Rachel strode through the unit's double doors. She'd spent hours the night before rehearsing professional responses to unprofessional behavior. No matter what Whitaker and Caldwell threw at her, she would handle it with grace. That resolution lasted mere minutes. "Look who decided to show up," Dr. Caldwell's voice carried across the nurses' station. His scrubs were wrinkled, his eyes bloodshot from an overnight emergency surgery schedule that had run long. "Maybe if your hair wasn't so huge, you could move faster through doorways." Rachel ignored him, logging into her computer to check patient assignments. The overnight nurse looked exhausted as she gave report. "Fair warning, it's been chaos. 3 emergency surgeries backed everything up." Dr. Whitaker appeared behind them, his usual polished appearance slightly frayed around the edges. "Bennett, your charting from yesterday was substandard. I had to waste valuable time correcting your notation format." "I followed standard protocols," Rachel replied evenly, pulling up the relevant files. "Each entry meets requirements." "Perhaps at whatever second-rate facility you came from," he sneered. "But this is Mercy Regional. We have higher standards." Throughout the shift, their attacks grew bolder. During rounds, Whitaker interrupted Rachel's patient updates repeatedly, questioning basic care decisions in front of families. When she explained the rationale for a pain management adjustment, he cut her off mid-sentence. "Let me handle the medical decisions," he snapped. "Just focus on following orders correctly." Later, while Rachel was helping an elderly patient with physical therapy, Caldwell barged in without knocking. "Just checking to make sure your wild hair isn't contaminating the sterile dressing," he announced loudly. "Wouldn't want any shedding issues?" The patient looked confused. "But Nurse Bennett has been wonderful." "Just a little workplace humor," Caldwell said with an ugly laugh. "Our new nurse needs to learn to take a joke." Rachel kept her voice steady. "Mr. Collins, let's continue with your breathing exercises." She turned her back on Caldwell, focusing entirely on her patient's needs. As the hours passed, the surgical backlog had created genuine chaos. The recovery unit filled with post-op patients requiring complex care. Rachel moved efficiently between rooms, documenting everything meticulously despite the rush. Her careful organization seemed to irritate the doctors even more. "Playing secretary instead of doing real work," Whitaker demanded when he found her updating charts. "I need that bed turned over now." "Patient safety requires proper documentation," Rachel replied. "I'll have the room ready in 5 minutes." "Getting attitude now," Caldwell appeared beside Whitaker. "Maybe if you spent less time on your hair and more time on speed." "My work speaks for itself," Rachel said, continuing to type. "The patient charts are complete and accurate." Their harassment escalated with each passing hour. When Rachel questioned a medication dosage that seemed incorrect, Whitaker accused her of overstepping. When she efficiently handled a patient's dropping oxygen levels, Caldwell claimed she was showing off. The other nurses kept their distance, though Carolyn shot her concerned glances whenever possible. The message was clear. This was more than usual workplace friction. The doctors were deliberately targeting her, growing angrier as she refused to break. Near the end of her shift, Rachel was double-checking discharge orders when a unit secretary rushed up. "Dr. Whitaker needs you urgently. Unstable post-op patient in the East Wing on-call room, said to hurry." Rachel grabbed her stethoscope and rushed down the hallway, her mind already running through possible scenarios: low blood pressure, breathing problems. The on-call room was around the corner, used by staff for quick rest during long shifts. She pushed open the door and found an empty room. No patient, no emergency, just Whitaker and Caldwell blocking her exit. "Time for your initiation, Bennett," Caldwell grinned, holding up his phone to film. "Every new nurse goes through it." The door clicked shut behind her with terrible finality. Rachel's heart hammered as she took in the scene. The 2 men positioned between her and escape, the phone recording her reaction. The absolute certainty that this had been carefully planned. "Don't worry." Whitaker's smile was predatory as he moved closer. "It's just a little team-building exercise. You want to be part of the team, don't you?" The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The room felt impossibly small. Rachel realized with crystal clarity that she was trapped with 2 men who had spent days trying to break her, and no one knew she was here. "This isn't funny," she said firmly, though her mouth had gone dry. "I'm leaving now." "Oh, come on." Caldwell laughed, still filming. "Where's your sense of humor? We're just getting started." The door remained shut behind her. There was nowhere to go. Inside the on-call room, Rachel's heart pounded against her ribs as she backed away from the two doctors. The small space felt like a trap closing in around her. "Let me out," she demanded, trying to keep her voice steady. "This isn't appropriate." "Lighten up, Bennett." Caldwell's phone followed her movements, recording her growing distress. "Everyone goes through initiation, right, Ethan?" Whitaker's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Absolutely. Consider it a welcome gift from your superiors." Rachel's back hit the wall. The doctors had positioned themselves between her and the door, using their height and bulk to block any escape route. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across their faces, transforming their usual smirks into something predatory. "I said no." Rachel's fingers curled into fists. "Move away from the door, now." Caldwell reached into his pocket and pulled out a patient grooming kit, the type used for pre-surgical prep. The electric clippers inside made a sharp clicking sound as he removed them. "Just a little trim," he said, waving the clippers. "Get you looking proper and hospital neat." "Don't you dare touch me!" Rachel's voice rose with fury and fear. "This is assault." "Assault?" Whitaker laughed, the sound echoing off the walls. "We're doing you a favor. That unprofessional mess on your head has no place in our unit." Rachel lunged for the gap between them, trying to force her way through, but Whitaker moved faster, his hands clamping down on her shoulders from behind. His fingers dug into her scrubs as she struggled. "Hold still," he ordered. "The more you fight, the worse it'll look." "No," Rachel twisted against his grip. "Let go of me." The clippers buzzed to life in Caldwell's hand. He approached with the phone still recording, his face lit with cruel anticipation. "Time for your makeover." "Stop!" Rachel kicked out, but Whitaker's hold was too strong. "I said no." The clippers touched her scalp. Rachel felt the vibration against her skin. Then the horrible sensation of the blades shearing through her carefully styled hair. Thick sections fell to the floor around her feet. "Looking better already," Caldwell taunted, carving another uneven path. "Much more appropriate." Tears of rage burned in Rachel's eyes as more of her hair dropped away. Each pass of the clippers felt like a violation, destroying not just her appearance, but her dignity. The doctor's laughter mixed with the mechanical buzzing, creating a soundtrack of humiliation. "Just accepting the inevitable," Whitaker said near her ear, still restraining her. "Consider it a lesson in humility." Rachel drove her elbow backward with all her strength. The sudden movement caught Whitaker by surprise, loosening his grip just enough. She wrenched free and shoved past Caldwell, who stumbled back against the wall. "You're insane!" he shouted after her as she yanked open the door. Rachel burst into the hallway, her legs shaking. Her hands flew to her head, feeling the damage. Large patches had been shaved down to the skin, leaving her scalp exposed in irregular patterns. What remained of her hair stood out in ragged tufts. Through blurred vision, she saw Carolyn coming around the corner. The older nurse took one look at Rachel's devastated appearance, and her expression hardened. "Come with me right now," Carolyn said, gripping Rachel's arm. She steered them quickly into her private office and locked the door. "This wasn't horseplay," Carolyn stated, her voice tight with controlled anger. She pulled out her phone and began taking photos of Rachel's ruined hair. "This was an assault. We're documenting everything before they try to spin it." Rachel sank into a chair, her whole body trembling. The reality of what had just happened crashed over her in waves. "They held me down," she whispered. "They filmed it." "I know, baby." Carolyn's gentleness only made the tears flow faster. "But we're going to handle this right. No covering it up this time." She pulled out incident forms and began writing rapidly, her pen scratching across the paper. "Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail, words used, who did what. We'll file the official report before they can create their version." Later, Rachel sat in a hard chair in the administration wing. Her scalp still tingled where the clippers had scraped across it. The statement she'd just given felt inadequate to capture the full weight of the violation. "They trapped me," she repeated numbly to the HR director. "They held me down and destroyed my hair while laughing. How is that a prank?" The fluorescent lights in the office seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as her pounding head. Her fingers kept reaching up to touch the ruined remains of her hair, each contact a fresh reminder of the assault. The doctor's laughter still echoed in her ears, mixed with the terrible sound of the clippers. Carolyn sat beside her, a solid presence radiating quiet fury. They had documented everything, the uneven patches of exposed scalp, the hair scattered across the on-call room floor, the red marks on Rachel's shoulders where Whitaker had gripped her. Now they waited to see if the administration would treat this violation with the seriousness it deserved. The hospital's security office felt cold and sterile. Rachel sat with her arms wrapped around herself while Carolyn stood beside her chair, one hand resting protectively on her shoulder. Through the window, they could see administrators huddled around a monitor reviewing security footage. "I want to file a police report," Rachel said, her voice steady from repeating her statement multiple times. This wasn't a joke or a prank, it was assault. "You have every right to call the police," Carolyn agreed firmly. "Don't let anyone tell you different." The security director, Mr. Thompson, turned from the monitor with a grave expression. "Ms. Bennett, we found some relevant footage. Would you be willing to view it?" Rachel nodded, though her stomach clenched. On the screen, she watched herself walking down the hallway, then Whitaker appearing behind her, his hand pressing against her back as he forced her toward the on-call room. "There's more," Thompson said quietly. He gestured to a young orderly hovering nervously by the door. "Mr. Ellis, please tell Miss Bennett what you witnessed." Darius Ellis stepped forward, twisting his hands together. "I was mopping near that room when I heard noises like a struggle and laughing. The door opened for a moment, and I recorded some of it on my phone. I'm sorry I didn't step in, but I thought maybe having proof would help." He pulled out his phone with trembling fingers and played a short video. The sound of buzzing clippers filled the room, along with Caldwell's voice saying clearly, "Hold still. This is for your own good." The footage showed a glimpse of Rachel breaking free, her hair already partially destroyed. "This changes things considerably," the hospital's night administrator said. She'd been watching silently until now. "Dr. Whitaker and Dr. Caldwell are still in the building. We should speak with them immediately." Within minutes, both doctors were brought to a conference room down the hall. Through the glass walls, Rachel could see their faces change as they learned about the videos. Whitaker's usual confidence cracked. Caldwell started talking rapidly, his hands moving in defensive gestures. "It was mutual joking around," Caldwell's voice carried through the door. "Ask anyone. We're known for welcome pranks. She was laughing too." "The footage suggests otherwise," the administrator replied coldly. "Both of you are suspended, effective immediately pending a full investigation." Whitaker stood up, his chair scraping back. "This is ridiculous. We're senior staff. You can't possibly—" "We can and we are," the administrator cut him off. "Security will escort you out. Do not return to the premises until notified." Rachel watched them being led away, their white coats like flags of surrender in the dim hallway. The sight should have felt triumphant, but she was too drained to feel anything but hollow. "Let's get you home," Carolyn said gently. "You've given enough statements for one night." The drive home passed in a blur. Rachel had texted her brother earlier, and Brandon was waiting on his porch when Carolyn dropped her off. His face tightened with anger when he saw her ruined hair under the porch light, but he kept his voice steady. "Come on, sis," he said, leading her inside. "Let's fix this." In his bathroom, Brandon carefully draped a cape around her shoulders, the same one he used for clients at his barbershop. He laid out his professional clippers and guards with precise movements. "They turned something beautiful into a weapon," he said, examining the uneven patches they'd left. "But we're taking it back. You tell me how you want this done." Rachel stared at her reflection at the destroyed remains of the style she'd worn proudly just that morning. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Just make it clean," she whispered. "Make it even." Brandon worked with gentle expertise, carefully evening out the brutal hack job into a deliberate style. As her remaining hair fell away, Rachel felt something shift inside her, grief mixing with determination. "Remember when Mom used to do your hair?" Brandon asked softly, his clippers moving in smooth strokes. "She'd say your crown was your strength." "She'd be so angry right now," Rachel said, wiping her eyes. "She'd be proud of you for standing up to them," Brandon corrected. "And she'd say what I'm saying. They hurt you, but they didn't break you. That's different." When he finished, Rachel's head was shaved clean and even. The style was stark, but somehow dignified, chosen rather than forced upon her. She ran her palm over the smooth surface, feeling the shape of her skull beneath. Light was just beginning to creep through the windows. Rachel stood before the bathroom mirror, turning her head to examine her reflection from different angles. Her eyes were red from crying, but clear now, her jaw set with determination. The woman in the mirror looked stripped down, but undefeated. She would return to face them. She would not let them make her disappear. Rachel adjusted her emerald green head wrap in the rearview mirror before walking into Mercy Regional Hospital's main entrance. She'd chosen it carefully, dignified, professional, and impossible to ignore. Several nurses at the front desk fell silent when she passed. Their eyes followed her, but no one spoke. Rachel kept her chin high, her steps measured and deliberate. She had nothing to be ashamed of. The elevator dinged open on the surgical floor. Before Rachel could even reach the nurse's station, a young administrator intercepted her with a clipboard. "Ms. Bennett, HR needs to see you right away. Susan Drake is waiting in conference room B." Rachel's stomach tightened, but she nodded calmly. She'd expected this. Susan Drake sat behind a polished table, elegant in a dove gray suit. 2 thick folders lay before her, along with what looked like legal documents. Her smile was practiced and sympathetic. "Rachel, please come in. How are you holding up?" "I'm here to work," Rachel said, remaining standing, "and to ensure proper documentation of what happened." "Yes, about that," Susan gestured to a chair. "Please sit. We've prepared a comprehensive wellness package to help you through this difficult time." Rachel sat stiffly, her hands folded in her lap. Susan slid several papers across the table. "The hospital takes staff well-being very seriously," Susan continued. "We're offering paid administrative leave, complete coverage for counseling services, and," she paused delicately, "a confidential resolution payment to help you move forward." "You mean hush money?" Susan's smile tightened. "We prefer to think of it as support during a challenging transition. Of course, accepting would require standard non-disclosure and non-litigation agreements." "You want me to stay quiet about being assaulted?" "That term feels rather inflammatory," Susan said. "We are trying to resolve an unfortunate interpersonal incident with sensitivity to all parties." Rachel stood up so quickly her chair scraped back. "My answer is no, absolutely not. Please consider carefully before refusing." Susan's voice hardened slightly. "This is a generous package. The alternative could be messier." "Was that a threat?" "Simply an observation about workplace dynamics. These situations can become complicated." Rachel walked out without another word, her heart pounding. She found Carolyn in the break room reading reports with thin, pressed lips. "They tried to buy me off," Rachel said quietly. Carolyn didn't look surprised. "People are already talking, saying it was just rough joking that got out of hand, that you're being dramatic." "How can they say that? There's video evidence." "Evidence can be—" Carolyn trailed off as another nurse entered, then quickly left. "Evidence can be interpreted different ways by people with power." Rachel saw exactly what Carolyn meant. A revised incident report appeared in her file. The language had shifted dramatically. Forcible restraint became inappropriate physical contact. Assault was now unprofessional behavior. Even the security footage was described as inconclusive regarding intent. She overheard whispers in the hallway. "If she can't take a joke playing the victim, career killer." Darius found her by the supply closet, his face drawn with worry. "They put me on probation," he whispered. "Said I violated HIPAA by recording inside the unit. They're threatening my job." Before Rachel could respond, an administrator appeared with another envelope. Inside was a formal notice. Dr. Whitaker and Dr. Caldwell would return to regular duties. The investigation had found insufficient evidence of malicious intent. A separate note suggested Rachel could request transfer to another unit if continued proximity creates discomfort. She crumpled the papers in her fist. Without changing out of her scrubs, she drove straight to the law offices of Klein and Associates. The receptionist tried to explain they were closing soon, but Rachel refused to leave until someone heard her story. Rebecca Klein emerged from her office, elegant and imposing in a charcoal suit. Her sharp eyes took in Rachel's head wrap, uniform, and trembling hands. "Come in," she said simply. "Tell me everything." For the next 2 hours, Rachel laid out every detail while Rebecca took precise notes. She described the escalating harassment, the assault, the video evidence, the pressure to stay quiet, the altered reports, and the doctor's reinstatement. "They expect me to either work under them or quit," Rachel finished, "like I'm the problem." Rebecca set down her pen and studied Rachel carefully. "You documented everything?" "Yes, exact quotes. I have copies of the original report and the revised version. Carolyn witnessed the aftermath and made her own notes." "Smart," Rebecca nodded. "And you refused their settlement offer?" "I won't let them bury this." "Good." Rebecca's smile was razor sharp. "Because we're going to make them wish they'd never touched you." She pulled out fresh legal papers and began filling them out with swift precision. $7 million, she said. "That's our opening demand. Compensatory damages, punitive damages, and a very public reminder that actions have consequences." Rachel watched as Rebecca's pen flew across the documents. "Will it be enough to get their attention?" "Absolutely. To make them face what they did. That's what we're going to fight for." By the time Rebecca finished preparing the initial filing, the law office was dark except for their conference room. Rachel's scrubs were wrinkled, and her head ached from tension, but her spine was still straight as she signed the last paper. The phone's buzzing jolted Rachel awake. 28 missed calls lit up her screen along with dozens of text messages. Her heart raced as she opened the first news alert. $7 million lawsuit filed against Mercy Regional Hospital. Doctors accused of forcibly shaving black nurse. Brandon's call came through before she could process more. "You seeing this? It's everywhere. Channel 4 has a van outside the hospital already." Rachel's throat felt dry. She clicked through local news sites, each headline more sensational than the last. "Don't go on social media," Brandon warned. "People are running their mouths without knowing anything." But Rachel was already scrolling, her stomach dropping at comment after comment. "Sounds like someone can't take a joke. $7 million for a haircut, please. These nurses trying to get rich quick." Her phone buzzed again. Rebecca Klein. "They're moving faster than expected," Rebecca said without preamble. "Hospital PR is already pushing their narrative. I need you to document everything starting now. Every conversation, every schedule change, every sideways look. Can you do that?" "Yes." Rachel grabbed a notebook. "Should I still go in today?" "Absolutely. Don't give them any ammunition about reliability, but be careful. They'll try to provoke reactions they can use against you." Rachel dressed with extra care, choosing a deep purple head wrap and her crispest scrubs. 3 news vans lined the hospital entrance when she arrived. Reporters called her name, but she walked past without comment, just as Rebecca had instructed. Inside, the usual morning bustle felt muffled, artificial. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. People found reasons to walk other routes. Even staff who'd been friendly suddenly had urgent tasks elsewhere. At the nurses' station, her assignment sheet showed changes. Instead of her usual recovery floor rotation, she was moved to the highest need wing with the most demanding patients. Her lunch break had been shifted to off-peak hours when backup coverage was thinnest. "They're trying to wear you down," Carolyn murmured, sliding past with supply cart. "Don't let them see it working." Rachel nodded slightly, noting the schedule changes in her phone. She worked methodically through the morning, handling each task with careful precision while logging every irregularity. No one offered the usual help with patient transfers. Equipment she needed mysteriously disappeared. Simple requests took multiple follow-ups. During her isolated lunch break, she found more social media posts now with uglier undertones. Another race card player probably couldn't handle the job anyway. These people always claiming victim status. She forced herself to screenshot everything, then put the phone away. Brandon was right. Reading comments only drained energy she needed for surviving the shift. Whitaker and Caldwell were conspicuously absent, but their influence hung over everything. Nurses who'd previously shared friendly small talk now treated her with robotic politeness. An administrator happened to notice minor charting delays. A patient who'd specifically requested Rachel was reassigned without explanation. "Remember?" Carolyn whispered during a brief overlap in the supply room. "They want you to snap. Stay frosty." Rachel's phone buzzed with another call from Rebecca. "Their legal team is already building a counter-narrative," Rebecca reported. "They're pulling your entire work history, talking to former colleagues, looking for anything they can spin. They'll try to paint you as unstable, attention-seeking, chronically dissatisfied. Standard character assassination playbook." "So the lawsuit didn't scare them at all," Rachel said. "No, it made them dangerous. Document everything, especially any pattern of different treatment. We need to prove retaliation." The rest of the shift felt endless. Every interaction seemed loaded with hidden threats. Rachel moved carefully, spoke softly, and kept her phone's voice recorder running in her pocket. She noted which staff avoided her, which ones watched too closely, which ones suddenly needed everything in writing. By the end of the shift, she was exhausted but clear-headed. This wasn't just about the assault anymore. The institution was revealing its true nature and how it responded. Each petty punishment and cold shoulder proved the culture that had allowed the original attack. She drove to Brandon's house, needing the comfort of family. He had dinner waiting, her favorite comfort food from childhood. "You look beat," he said, pulling out a chair for her. "I need to write everything down while it's fresh." Rachel pulled out a leather-bound notebook, their mother's old diary, empty until now. "Every single thing they do to punish me for speaking up goes in here." Brandon set a mug of tea beside her. "You sure you want to keep fighting? Nobody would blame you for walking away." Rachel opened the notebook to its first clean page. "They're counting on me giving up. That's exactly why I can't." She began writing, her pen moving steadily across the paper. The light hadn't yet touched the horizon when Rachel settled at her kitchen table, steam rising from her coffee cup. Her mother's leather notebook lay open before her, pages now filled with meticulous notes. Each entry documented another small cruelty, another calculated slight. She reviewed her neat handwriting. Usual backup nurse reassigned without notice. Supply cabinet code changed. No one informed me. Patient request for me denied. The pattern was clear, death by 1,000 cuts. Rachel arrived at Mercy Regional early, parking far from the news vans that still lingered. She'd barely clocked in when Susan Drake intercepted her, holding a yellow write-up slip. "Just following up on some documentation concerns," Susan said, her professional smile never reaching her eyes. "We noticed a delay in your post-operative notes." Rachel kept her voice steady. That was during the emergency influx. Every nurse had delayed charting that night. "Oh well, this one was flagged specifically." Susan's pen tapped the paper. "We'll need your signature acknowledging the violation." Through the glass walls of the nurses' station, Rachel could see other staff watching. She signed without argument, noting details in her phone the moment Susan walked away. The morning brought a cascade of small retaliations. Her regular lunch break disappeared from the schedule, replaced with an awkward slot when the cafeteria would be nearly closed. Her usual patients were redistributed, leaving her with the highest need cases that required constant monitoring. "Random adjustments for workflow efficiency," the unit secretary said blandly when Rachel inquired. Dr. Whitaker returned to the floor like nothing had happened. He strode past in his white coat, chatting with administrators who laughed at his jokes. The sight of him moving freely through the space he'd violated made Rachel's hands shake, but she focused on her tasks, documenting everything. Dr. Caldwell arrived later, even more boisterous than usual. His voice carried deliberately across the unit. "Man, some people just can't take a little workplace fun anymore, right?" Several nurses tittered nervously. Others found reasons to disappear into patient rooms. Rachel felt their eyes on her but kept working, her phone recording in her pocket. During her lunch break, Carolyn found her in the nearly empty cafeteria. "You're not the first," Carolyn said quietly, sliding into the seat across from her. "Remember Lydia Morales from Ortho? Transferred suddenly. Whitaker made her life hell after she reported him for verbal abuse. And that new grad, Jessica Caldwell, drove her out with his jokes. The pattern goes back years." "How many others?" Rachel asked. "At least 5 I know of personally. All women, mostly minorities. They'd complain, get isolated, then either transfer or quit. Hospital would rather lose good nurses than discipline profitable doctors." Rachel noted the names in her phone. Did anyone ever fight back? One tried. Isabella Vargas, surgical resident, filed a formal complaint about Whitaker's behavior. Within a month, she had negative performance reviews, lost procedure privileges, eventually left medicine entirely. After her shift, Rachel met Rebecca at a coffee shop miles from the hospital. Isabella Vargas sat waiting for them, hands wrapped around an untouched cup of tea. "I should have pushed harder," Isabella said, her voice tight. "But I had student loans, my parents' medical bills. I couldn't risk losing everything. They make sure you know the cost of speaking up." She described Whitaker's escalating cruelty, the public humiliation, the sabotaged cases, the whisper campaign that painted her as unstable. Her hands trembled as she recalled the day she finally quit. "The system protects them," Isabella said. "The hospital needs their surgeries, their referrals, their reputation. We're replaceable. They're not." Rebecca recorded everything while Rachel took notes. The pattern emerged clearly. Identify targets, isolate them, make examples of them, replace them, repeat. They count on fear and financial pressure to maintain control. Each silent departure makes the next victim feel more alone. At home that night, Rachel transferred Isabella's account into her case file, fingers flying across the keyboard as she captured every detail. The familiar anger rose as she typed, not just at Whitaker and Caldwell now, but at the institution that empowered them, the administrators who covered for them, the system that kept churning out new victims. When she finally lay down, sleep wouldn't come. The day's events played on repeat. Susan's practiced smile, Whitaker's confident stride, Caldwell's loud laughter, Isabella's shaking hands, all the pieces of a machine designed to grind down resistance. Rachel stared at her ceiling, exhausted but alert. The morning sun barely warmed the windows of Eddie's diner as Rachel slid into a corner booth. Her eyes felt gritty from lack of sleep, and she wrapped her hands around a steaming coffee cup while waiting for Rebecca. The regulars paid no attention to her, focused on their eggs and newspapers. Rebecca arrived, her leather briefcase bulging with documents. She ordered coffee before spreading manila folders across the worn tabletop. "I spent half the night going through archived complaints," Rebecca said, her voice low despite the diner's clatter. "The pattern goes deeper than we thought." She opened the first folder, revealing a formal complaint. Dr. Sofia Martinez, surgical resident. Whitaker systematically undermined her during procedures, called her incompetent in front of patients, suggested she got into medical school through quotas. Rachel scanned the documents, her jaw tightening. What happened to her? Transferred to a hospital in Arizona after her evaluations mysteriously tanked. She's working urgent care now. Gave up surgery entirely. Rebecca pulled out another file. Then there's Marcus Thompson, maintenance staff. Caldwell humiliated him in the cafeteria, made jokes about him being too slow to clean properly. When Thompson filed a complaint, he was suddenly reassigned to night shift, then demoted for performance issues. The waitress brought their breakfast, but Rachel had lost her appetite. File after file revealed similar stories. Minorities targeted, complaints filed, careers damaged, people forced out. Each case seemed minor in isolation. A transfer request here, a resignation there. Together they painted an ugly picture. They're careful, Rebecca noted, buttering her toast. Never quite enough evidence in any single case to prove discrimination. But the pattern is clear if you know where to look. How did they get away with this for so long? Money, prestige. Whitaker brings in millions in surgical revenue. Caldwell's connected to half the anesthesiologists in the state. The hospital protects its assets. Rachel pushed her eggs around her plate. So I'm just their latest target. No, Rebecca said firmly. You're the one who's going to stop them. An hour later, Rachel walked into Mercy Regional, the weight of those files heavy in her mind. The morning huddle scattered as she approached the nurses' station. Conversations died. People found reasons to be elsewhere. "Morning, everyone," she said clearly, refusing to act ashamed. A few nurses mumbled replies without meeting her eyes. They treated her like she was radioactive now, someone who had violated the unspoken rule against naming the hospital's sins. During rounds, she focused on her patients, finding comfort in the familiar routines of care. In room 412, Mrs. Henderson grabbed her hand while Rachel checked her IV. "You look tired, honey," the elderly woman said. "Are you getting enough rest?" The simple kindness almost broke through Rachel's professional mask. "I'm fine, Mrs. Henderson. Just busy taking good care of folks like you." "That's why I trust you," Mrs. Henderson smiled. "You really see us. Not everyone does." The comment carried Rachel through the rest of her shift, reminding her why she'd chosen nursing, not for the hospital's approval, but for moments of genuine human connection. That evening, she joined Brandon at Hope Community Church's weekly prayer circle. The small group met in the church basement, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Sister Evelyn hugged her tight. "We're all praying for you, child." But as the group settled into metal folding chairs, the divided responses became clear. Some, like Deacon Johnson, voiced fierce support. "Sometimes the Lord calls us to stand up against evil," he declared. "Silence helps the oppressor, not the oppressed." Others were less encouraging. Sister Miller suggested that pursuing worldly justice through lawsuits might hurt Rachel's spirit. Brother Thomas wondered if accepting a settlement would bring faster healing than a public fight. "The hospital does so much good work," Sister Miller added. "Is it worth damaging that reputation over one incident?" "It wasn't one incident," Rachel said quietly. "And it wasn't just me." But she could see some minds were made up. Even here in her church family, the pressure to maintain comfortable silence was strong. Driving home later, streetlights streaking past, Rachel felt the weight of disappointment. Brandon glanced over from behind the wheel. "You okay, sis?" "I thought they'd understand better," she said. "How can they tell me to let it go when they know others will face the same thing?" "Some folks mistake peace for justice," Brandon replied. "They think keeping quiet keeps the peace, but you're right. Silence just ensures there will be another victim. If I quit now, if I take their money and disappear, nothing changes," Rachel said. "The next nurse, the next janitor, the next resident, they'll all face the same abuse, the same isolation, the same pressure to stay quiet." Her phone buzzed. Rebecca's name lit up the screen. "Rachel," her lawyer said without preamble, "Darius Ellis just called. He's ready to talk." Thunder cracked outside Rebecca's 10th-floor office as Darius Ellis sank into a leather chair, his hands fidgeting in his lap. Rain streaked the windows, creating a gray curtain over the city below. Rachel sat quietly, watching the young orderly struggle to find his words. "Take your time," Rebecca said, her voice gentle but firm. "Just tell us exactly what you saw and heard that day." Darius nodded, swallowing hard. "I was doing my rounds, bringing fresh linens to the on-call rooms. That's when I heard the commotion." Lightning flashed, making him jump. Rebecca leaned forward slightly, recorder ready. "I heard laughing first," Darius continued, "but not good laughing, mean laughing. Then I heard Ms. Bennett, Rachel. She was saying, 'Stop.' Clear as day, she said it multiple times." Rachel's hands tightened in her lap, but she kept her face neutral. Rebecca watched Darius intently. I looked through the door when it swung open. Dr. Whitaker had her by the shoulders. Darius demonstrated the position with his hands. He was holding her there while Dr. Caldwell had the clippers. That's when I started recording on my phone. "And what exactly did you hear Dr. Caldwell say?" Rebecca asked. Darius's voice steadied as he recalled the specific words. He was laughing and said, "Now maybe she'll look hospital neat," like it was some kind of joke. But his voice, it wasn't joking, it was cruel. Rebecca's pen moved across her legal pad. Those were his exact words. "You're certain?" "Yes, ma'am. I'll never forget it. The way he said it." Darius shook his head. It wasn't right. None of it was right. Rachel felt a surge of vindication. Hospital neat. The phrase exposed their true motivation. It wasn't a prank gone wrong. It was targeted harassment meant to strip away her identity and dignity. "What happened next?" Rebecca prompted. Ms. Bennett broke free and ran out. She was shaking. Her hair. Darius looked at Rachel apologetically. It was destroyed, patches missing, uneven. Dr. Caldwell was still laughing, but Dr. Whitaker looked nervous when he saw me there with my phone. Thunder rolled again as Rebecca continued taking notes. "And the hospital administration, when did they first contact you about what you witnessed?" "That same night, Ms. Drake from HR called me in. She kept saying how important it was to maintain perspective and consider the bigger picture, like she was warning me." While Darius spoke, Rebecca's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then sat up straighter. "Excuse me one moment," she said, stepping to her desk. Her eyes scanned rapidly over an email. A small smile touched her lips. "What is it?" Rachel asked. "A gift," Rebecca replied. "Someone inside HR just forwarded me an email chain from the night of the assault. Susan Drake was already discussing containment strategy and message control before she even finished taking your statement." Rachel's voice rose slightly. "Exactly. They weren't investigating. They were covering up from the very beginning." Rebecca turned to Darius. "This matches what you experienced, doesn't it? Their immediate focus was on controlling the story, not finding the truth." Darius nodded emphatically. "They cared more about protecting those doctors than what they did to Ms. Bennett." Rebecca began rapidly typing on her laptop. "This changes everything. Darius's testimony proves discriminatory intent. The email proves institutional protection of abuse. I'm filing an amended complaint immediately." Outside, the storm was intensifying, but inside the office, the atmosphere had shifted. Rachel felt lighter than she had in weeks. By early evening, her phone was buzzing constantly with news alerts. Local reporters were asking pointed questions about hospital leadership. 2 board members had called for an independent investigation. Even the medical board was making inquiries about Whitaker and Caldwell's conduct. "Come on," Brandon said when he picked her up. "You need to eat something real. No more lunch from the hospital cafeteria." They ended up at their favorite diner, the same one where they'd spent countless hours after their mother's passing. Carolyn joined them, ordering coffee and peach cobbler. "The tide's turning," Carolyn said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "But remember, powerful people are like wounded animals when they're cornered, most dangerous right before they fall." "Let them try something," Brandon said. "We've got truth on our side now." "And evidence," Rachel added, thinking of Darius's brave testimony and the leaked emails. For the first time since that horrible day in the on-call room, she felt truly hopeful. Later that night in her apartment, Rachel stood at her bedroom window, watching the storm clear. Stars were beginning to peek through breaks in the clouds. She touched her growing hair, remembering Mrs. Henderson's kindness, Darius's courage, Carolyn's wisdom, and Brandon's unwavering support. The worst wasn't just over. Justice finally felt possible. She climbed into bed, body relaxing into the mattress. For the first time in weeks, sleep came easily, untroubled by nightmares or anxiety. Hope was enough. Rachel's phone buzzed with a CNN notification before she even got out of bed. Squinting at the screen, she saw 3 missed calls from Rebecca and multiple messages from national news producers. Her story was breaking beyond local coverage. She called Rebecca back immediately, still in her pajamas. "Good morning," Rebecca said, sounding energized. "How quickly can you meet? Things are moving fast." "What's happening?" The hospital's legal team reached out. Settlement numbers that seemed impossible last week are suddenly on the table. Multiple networks want your story. The board chairman is facing pressure from major donors. Rachel sat on the edge of her bed, heart racing. This is really happening. "It's happening. Get dressed. I'll send a car." Another call beeped through, a producer from Good Morning America. Rachel's hands trembled as she ended the call with Rebecca. After weeks of fighting, justice finally seemed within reach. She was choosing an outfit when Rebecca called back, her voice tighter now. "Stay home. Something's wrong." By late morning, Everything collapsed. Darius appeared on local news, voice shaking, recanting his testimony. He claimed he had misunderstood what he saw and apologized for adding to workplace tensions. The hospital's PR team blasted his statement to every newsroom in Atlanta. Rachel called Rebecca. What happened? His brother was arrested last night, supposedly routine warrant check. The arresting officer's wife sits on the hospital board. They threatened his family. Rachel's voice cracked. We can't prove it, but Darius has gone dark. His phone's disconnected. Before Rachel could process this blow, social media erupted with leaked fragments of her personnel file, old notes about missed chart updates, a patient complaint about delayed medication, omitting that the delay came from pharmacy backup, minor issues common to any nurse carefully curated to paint her as problematic. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Mercy Regional had released security footage heavily edited. The video began after the door closed, missing Whitaker forcing her inside. It ended before the clippers appeared. Without context, the grainy images showed 3 people in a room, movement that could be interpreted multiple ways. Cable news talking heads debated the ambiguous footage. Online comments called her a liar. Former supporters backed away, saying, "The truth seems complicated." Then came Susan Drake's statement, delivered with practiced concern. Ms. Bennett's initial account showed concerning emotional inconsistencies. While we take all allegations seriously, the evidence does not support claims of forcible assault. Rachel's hands shook as she got ready for her evening shift. She had to keep working. She couldn't let them drive her out. But walking through the hospital doors felt like entering enemy territory. Security stopped her at the front desk. "ID, please." She showed her badge. "Please wait here." Minutes later, Susan Drake appeared with 2 HR assistants. Her face showed rehearsed sympathy as she handed Rachel a thick envelope. "Your employment is terminated effective immediately for disruptive conduct affecting team cohesion. Your final pay will be processed according to state law." Rachel stared at the papers, mind blank. "I need to get my things." "They've been packed for you." A security guard appeared with a cardboard box. Her photos, spare scrubs, coffee mug, years of nursing excellence reduced to objects in a box. Staff members she'd worked beside for years suddenly found reasons to study their phones or hurry past. No one met her eyes. No one spoke up. Even nurses who had privately supported her stayed silent. She walked out carrying the box, past the gift shop where she used to buy candy for difficult patients, past the chapel where she'd prayed during tough shifts, past the coffee cart where she'd shared countless breaks with colleagues who now pretended not to see her. The drive home passed in a blur. Brandon was waiting at her apartment, having heard the news. He took the box from her trembling hands. "They destroyed everything," she whispered. "The video, Darius, my reputation. They just erased it all like it never happened." "They didn't erase anything," Brandon said firmly. "They just proved how far they'll go to hide the truth." But Rachel couldn't stop shaking. "I did everything right. I documented everything. I told the truth. I followed every rule. And they still..." Her voice broke. "They still won." Rebecca arrived an hour later, looking grimmer than Rachel had ever seen her. "The case isn't dead," she insisted, "but it just got much harder. They've created doubt. Reasonable doubt is all they need." "They made me look crazy," Rachel said quietly, "like I imagined it all." Hours later, long after Brandon and Rebecca had gone, Rachel sat alone on her apartment floor. The termination letter lay in front of her, its corporate language mocking everything she'd fought for. Outside her window, Atlanta's lights blurred through tears she was too tired to wipe away. Her phone buzzed with another news alert. Hospital officials questioned fired nurses' claims. She turned the phone face down without reading further. The silence felt absolute as she stared at the termination letter, wondering if she had any fight left. Rachel stared at her unworn scrubs, still hanging neatly in the closet. For the first time since starting at Mercy Regional, she had nowhere to go. The morning light crept across her bedroom floor while she remained in her pajamas, scrolling mindlessly through social media until the words blurred together. Comments under news articles felt like daggers. Attention seeker playing the race card. If she was professional, this wouldn't have happened. She closed the browser but couldn't escape the hollow feeling in her chest. Brandon had called twice already, offering breakfast, company, anything. But Rachel let his calls go to voicemail. The thought of putting on a brave face felt impossible. A firm knock at her door startled her from her daze. She considered ignoring it until she heard Carolyn's voice. "Rachel Bennett, open this door right now." Rachel shuffled to the entrance, wrapping her robe tighter. When she opened the door, Carolyn stood there holding a worn banker's box. its corners soft from age. "You going to let me in, or are we doing this in the hallway?" Carolyn asked, adjusting her grip on the box. Rachel stepped aside. "What's all that?" Carolyn set the box on Rachel's dining table with a thud. 23 years of keeping my mouth shut. That ends today." She began pulling out folders, manila envelopes, and handwritten notes on hospital letterhead. Some papers had turned yellow with age, their staples rusting at the corners. "I've been making copies," Carolyn explained, spreading documents across the table. "Every complaint that disappeared, every witness who got transferred or fired, every time Whitaker and Caldwell hurt someone and walked away clean. Rachel picked up a complaint form from years ago. You kept all this." Started the day they pushed out Maria Gonzalez, brilliant resident, wanted to be a surgeon. Whitaker broke her spirit piece by piece until she quit the program. Carolyn's voice hardened. "I told myself I was just being careful keeping records. Truth is, I was too scared to use them." "Why?" Rachel asked softly. "My husband died young, left me with medical bills and a son who needed rehab 3 times before it stuck. I couldn't risk my pension." Carolyn met Rachel's eyes. "But watching them fire you, I realized silence is just another word for permission." Rachel called Brandon, who arrived within minutes. Together they began sorting through Carolyn's collection. Complaint forms with identical handwriting but different signatures, security logs showing missing footage on dates that matched incident reports, HR memos discussing perception management instead of investigation. "Look at this," Brandon said, holding up 2 documents. Same incident, different summaries. The version that went to the board left out Caldwell's threats completely. Rachel found a pattern in personnel transfers. Every time someone filed against Whitaker, they were gone within months. Either they quit or got written up until they left. Susan Drake's signature is on most of these resolutions. Carolyn pointed out she's been covering for them for years. By afternoon, Rebecca arrived with her laptop and legal pad. She moved through the documents methodically, her expression growing darker. "This is systematic," she said. "Not just the assault, the whole infrastructure of hiding it, but something's still missing." She pulled up the security footage on her tablet. "The export timestamp on this video, it's wrong." "Wrong how?" Rachel asked. "Hospital security footage auto-archives every 48 hours, but this clip's metadata shows it was exported after your assault. Someone went in and altered it manually." The realization hit Rachel like a wave. This wasn't just about 2 doctors who attacked her. This was about an entire system designed to protect abusers and silence victims. "They didn't just cover up what happened to me," she said slowly. "They've been doing this for decades." "And they're still doing it," Carolyn added. 3 nurses transferred out of surgery last month. Nobody asked why." Rachel stood up, energy coursing through her for the first time since her firing. "This isn't just my fight anymore, is it?" "No," Rebecca agreed, already typing notes. "This is about every person they've hurt and every rule they've broken to hide it. I need to track down that video's chain of custody. If we can prove tampering, I have the original archiving procedures," Carolyn said, pulling another folder from her box. "They changed them last year without board approval." As evening settled over Atlanta, Rebecca gathered her materials and headed out to chase the video trail. Rachel walked Carolyn to her car, watching the older nurse move with lighter shoulders as if setting down a burden she'd carried too long. "Thank you," Rachel said quietly, "for not letting them bury this." Carolyn turned back, her face set with determination. "Baby, they've been burying people like us for years. It's time we did some digging of our own." The morning sun hadn't yet burned through Atlanta's haze when Rachel climbed into Rebecca's car. Brandon sat in the back, scrolling through directions to their destination. They were headed to a small office park on the outskirts of town to meet Kyle Brennan, the former IT subcontractor who'd managed Mercy Regional's security archives. "Remember," Rebecca said, navigating through early traffic, "let me do the talking. Kyle is nervous about legal exposure." Rachel nodded, watching the city slide past her window. After weeks of doors closing in her face, even this small lead felt dangerous to hope for. They found Kyle in a cramped office space that smelled of old coffee and electronics. Monitors crowded his desk, their screens filled with scrolling code. He was younger than Rachel expected, with anxious energy that showed in his constant finger tapping. "I should have said something sooner," Kyle said, pulling up server logs. "But the hospital's legal team, they're not people you want attention from." "What changed?" Rebecca asked. "They fired me last month, blamed me for a data breach that was their own IT director's mistake." His bitter laugh held no humor. Guess they needed a scapegoat who couldn't fight back. Kyle turned one monitor toward them. "Look at these access timestamps. The night of Miss Bennett's assault, someone logged into the archive system using admin credentials, but instead of the normal security team ID, it was routed through HR's network. Susan Drake's department, Rachel said quietly. Exactly. They accessed the raw footage for nearly 3 hours before the official version was exported. Kyle opened another window showing authorization logs. The original recording was much longer. I can prove it because the initial file size is logged here, almost triple what they released. Brandon leaned forward. So they didn't just cut the video short, they spent hours editing it and tried hiding their tracks, Kyle confirmed. But server backups are automatic. They forgot I had duplicate logs running on a separate system. Standard practice for evidence handling. Rebecca pulled out her laptop. We need everything documented. Access records, file sizes, timestamps, authorization chains. Already compiled. Kyle handed her a flash drive, including the archive path where the original footage should still be stored. The authentication data proves when and how it was altered. While Rebecca and Kyle worked through technical details, Rachel's phone buzzed. A text from Carolyn. Darius asking to meet says he's ready to tell the truth. Rebecca saw Rachel's expression. What is it? Darius wants to come back, Rachel said, if we can protect his family. Already working on it. Rebecca typed rapidly on her phone. I have a contact at Legal Aid who can help secure emergency protection orders. Let me make some calls. They spent the next hour in Kyle's office while Rebecca coordinated with her contacts. By early afternoon, she had arrangements in place for Darius's brother's safety. The protection orders would shield him from the hospital board members' threats. Tell Darius to meet us at my office, Rebecca told Rachel. We'll take his full statement under oath this time. Before they left, Kyle grabbed Rachel's arm. Ms. Bennett, what they did to you, it wasn't right. The whole system there is corrupt. Thank you, Rachel said, for helping us prove it. The afternoon blurred into evening as they gathered depositions and evidence. Darius arrived at Rebecca's office looking exhausted but determined. His hands shook as he signed his new statement. I'm sorry, he told Rachel. They said they'd destroy my brother's life. I was weak. You came back, Rachel said. That's what matters. Rebecca worked late into the night preparing emergency motions to force the hospital to produce the unedited footage. Every document had to be perfect. They couldn't risk giving Mercy Regional's lawyers any procedural openings. They'll try to destroy evidence once they realize what we found, Rebecca explained, still typing. We need court orders in place immediately. Rachel and Brandon stayed with her, ordering takeout when dinner time passed unnoticed. The office windows darkened as night settled over the city. Finally, Rebecca filed the last motion electronically. Now we wait, she said, rubbing her tired eyes. Brandon drove Rachel home, both of them too drained to talk much. She had just changed into pajamas when her phone lit up with Rebecca's number. We found the real video, Rebecca said without preamble. Rachel sank onto her bed, heart pounding, knowing everything was about to change. The clock on Rebecca's office wall ticked past midnight as they gathered around her desk monitor. Rachel sat between Brandon and Carolyn while Darius hovered nervously near the door. The city outside was quiet, but tension filled the room as Rebecca accessed the recovered server files. Are you ready? Rebecca asked Rachel gently. Rachel straightened her spine. Play it. The footage began with a clear view of the on-call room hallway. They watched as Rachel hurried down the corridor, responding to the false emergency call. There's no break in the recording here, Rebecca noted, not like the edited version. The unedited video showed Rachel entering the room alone, her movements urgent with professional concern. The angle captured her sudden stop when she saw there was no patient inside. Her body language changed instantly, shoulders tensing, stepping back toward the exit. Whitaker appeared in the doorway behind her, blocking her path. The audio was crisp. Going somewhere, Nurse Bennett? His tone dripped with mockery. Let me out. Rachel's voice was firm, despite her obvious fear. This is inappropriate. Caldwell moved into frame, holding up his phone to record. Come on. It's just a little initiation. Everyone goes through it. No. Rachel tried to push past them. I said no. The footage continued without the convenient cuts of the hospital's version. It showed Whitaker grabbing Rachel's shoulders while she struggled. Caldwell retrieved the clippers from the grooming kit, laughing as he turned them on. Time to look hospital neat, Whitaker sneered. More professional. Carolyn gripped Rachel's hand as they watched the assault unfold. The recording captured every second, Rachel's repeated demands to stop, her attempts to break free, the doctor's casual cruelty as they sheared off her hair. Brandon's jaw clenched. These men belong in jail. The unedited video ran much longer than the version Mercy Regional had released. It showed the full aftermath, Rachel stumbling out in shock, Carolyn rushing to help her, and crucially, Darius's partial phone recording of the doctor's continuing laughter. "That's exactly what I saw," Darius said quietly, "what I should have testified to from the start." Rebecca paused the playback. "Darius, are you willing to sign a new sworn statement right now, confirming this matches what you witnessed?" He nodded, hands shaking slightly as Rebecca prepared the paperwork. While he signed, she began examining the video's technical data. "The authentication codes are intact," she said. "Timestamps, file signatures, access logs, it's all here. They can't claim this was tampered with." "What about Susan's team accessing it?" Rachel asked. "The server logs prove they spent hours editing before releasing their version. That's intentional evidence manipulation." Rebecca's smile was sharp. The cover-up just became as damaging as the crime. They worked through the night preparing emergency filings. Rebecca documented the chain of custody while Carolyn helped correlate the footage with her notes from that day. Darius completed his new testimony, including every detail he'd previously been pressured to omit. Rachel watched them all, working to restore the truth, feeling a strange calm settle over her. The first time she'd lived through this assault, it had left her shattered. But seeing it now, with irrefutable proof, she felt something shifting inside her. From shame to righteous anger, from powerlessness to strength. "The hospital's lawyers will try to seal this," Rebecca warned as she assembled the filing. "We need to submit everything before they realize what we have." They finished as dawn broke. Rebecca sent runners to file the emergency motions at the courthouse the moment it opened. Within hours, the judge's clerk contacted her to confirm receipt of the new evidence. By mid-morning, the hospital's legal team was in full crisis mode. Their carefully constructed defense, built on edited footage and pressured retractions, was crumbling. The unedited video destroyed their claims of horseplay and misunderstanding. "They're already trying to schedule emergency settlement talks," Rebecca told Rachel, checking her phone messages. "Their tone has completely changed." Brandon snorted. "Now they want to talk." Outside the courthouse, reporters began gathering as word spread that major new evidence had been filed. Rachel watched them from Rebecca's office window, remembering how alone she'd felt when the story first broke. Now the truth was finally catching up to her abusers. "Look," Carolyn said softly, joining her at the window. She pointed to the growing media crowd below. "That's what accountability looks like. They can't hide anymore." Rachel touched her regrown hair, still short, but now a symbol of survival rather than humiliation. "No," she agreed. "They can't." Camera flashes exploded across the courthouse steps as Rachel walked beside Rebecca through the media gauntlet. Reporters shouted questions, their microphones thrust forward like accusatory fingers. Rachel kept her head high, her expression calm. She'd chosen a fitted burgundy blazer and crisp white blouse, professional armor for this decisive morning. Behind them, Mercy Regional's legal team practically sprinted up the steps, their usual courthouse swagger replaced by barely concealed panic. The hospital's lead counsel, Michael Harrington, was already sweating through his expensive suit despite the cool morning air. "Ms. Klein," Harrington called out, trying to sound casual. "Perhaps we could discuss in court, counselor." Rebecca cut him off without breaking stride. "Everything on the record today." The judge's chambers were oak-paneled and austere. Judge Elizabeth Harper, a veteran of employment law cases, studied the authentication documents with sharp attention. While both legal teams waited in intense silence, Rachel watched the judge's expression darken as she reviewed the server logs, showing exactly when and how the hospital had doctored the evidence. "This is extremely troubling," Judge Harper said finally, looking up at Harrington. "Your clients deliberately altered and misrepresented critical evidence. There appear to be multiple instances of witness intimidation, and these emails suggesting HR planned containment before investigation." She shook her head. "I'm considering referring this for criminal investigation." Harrington's face went ash gray. "Your Honor, we're prepared to discuss immediate resolution." "No private discussions," Rebecca interrupted. "My client requires full public accountability. We'll proceed in open court." The main courtroom was packed by the time they entered. Rachel spotted Brandon and Carolyn in the gallery. Hospital board members filled one row, their usual confidence replaced by grim expressions. Local news crews lined the back wall, cameras ready. Judge Harper wasted no time. "We'll begin with the unedited security footage." The courtroom fell silent as the video played on multiple screens. Without the hospital's selective editing, the assault was undeniable. Rachel heard several gasps when Whitaker grabbed her shoulders. Someone cursed softly at Caldwell's laughing commentary about making her hospital neat. Harrington seemed to shrink with each damning frame. When the lights came up, he was openly mopping his forehead. "Your Honor," he started, "Mercy Regional is prepared to offer—" "Our terms are non-negotiable," Rebecca stated, rising. "Full public admission of wrongdoing, permanent termination of both doctors, written apology, independent review of all discrimination complaints, reform measures with external oversight." She paused. "And of course, appropriate damages." "The hospital board needs time to—" Judge Harper's tone was steel. "You've had months to do the right thing. Instead, your clients chose orchestrated deception. I'm ordering an immediate settlement conference today, and I strongly suggest Mercy Regional accept Ms. Klein's terms before I allow this to proceed to trial with punitive damages." The pressure mounted hourly. By early afternoon, major news outlets were running stories about the unedited footage. Hospital donors began calling board members, threatening to withdraw support. The medical board announced emergency proceedings to review Whitaker and Caldwell's licenses. Rachel watched from Rebecca's office as the dominoes fell. Security cameras captured Whitaker being escorted from hospital property. His arrogance finally shattered. Caldwell followed an hour later, nearly running to his car as reporters shouted questions. Susan Drake's resignation hit the news feeds next after her emails about containment strategy leaked. The hospital CEO was forced to hold a humiliating press conference. Rachel observed his practiced charm crumble as he admitted the assault occurred exactly as she'd reported. He confirmed both doctors were terminated. He apologized for the institution's failure to protect staff. "They're caving on everything," Rebecca reported, checking updates between settlement sessions. "The board is terrified of a trial. They're even agreeing to name the reform initiative after your mother." Throughout the day, Rachel maintained her composure. She let Rebecca handle the legal combat while she sat straight-backed and dignified, forcing everyone who had doubted her to watch justice unfold. The same people who had mocked her sensitivity now couldn't meet her eyes. Harrington looked physically ill by late afternoon as he reviewed the final settlement terms. The hospital would pay $7 million, more than Rebecca's original demand. The package included compensatory damages, punitive damages, and funded workplace reforms. Every attempt to hide the truth had only made the consequences more severe. The sun was setting when Rebecca finally brought the signed agreement to her office. Rachel read each page carefully, her hand steady as she added her signature. The document was heavy with legal language, but its message was clear. Truth had prevailed. Her dignity had been restored, and no one who tried to bury her had emerged unscathed. "It's done," Rebecca said quietly, sliding the papers into her briefcase. She handed Rachel a copy of the signed agreement, physical proof that justice was possible, even against powerful institutions. Rachel held the document, feeling its weight. $7 million would fund real change, but the money mattered less than the public accountability. Everyone would know exactly what had happened in that on-call room. Everyone would see how the hospital had tried to hide it, and everyone would witness the consequences. Sunlight streamed through Brandon's kitchen windows, casting warm patterns across Rachel's coffee cup. For the first time in months, her shoulders relaxed as she breathed in the morning quiet. The weight of fear, that constant companion since the assault, had finally lifted. "You haven't smiled like that in a while," Brandon said, sliding a plate of eggs in front of her. He'd insisted she stay at his place after yesterday's settlement, wanting to celebrate as a family. "It feels strange," Rachel admitted, "like I'm waiting for another attack that isn't coming." "Because it's not," he said firmly. "They can't hurt you anymore." Her phone buzzed with news alerts. The medical board had scheduled emergency hearings for both Whitaker and Caldwell. Video showed Whitaker ducking into his lawyer's office, his usual swagger replaced by hunched shoulders and darting eyes. Caldwell had reportedly left town entirely. "Look at this," Brandon said, turning up his tablet's volume. The local morning news was showing Mercy Regional's CEO announcing an external review of all discrimination complaints from the past decade. Behind him, board members shifted uncomfortably as reporters shouted questions about other cases of buried misconduct. "3 more nurses have already filed new claims," Rachel said, scanning her emails. "Rebecca's office is helping them build their cases." She opened her banking app, still adjusting to the settlement amount displayed on the screen. The money felt almost secondary to the public accountability, but she knew exactly how to use it. Later that morning, Rachel met with the dean of her old nursing school. The woman's eyes widened as Rachel outlined her plan for the Rachel Bennett Nursing Scholarship. "Your mother would be so proud," the dean said, reaching for grant paperwork. "This will help dozens of students who couldn't otherwise afford training." "Make sure the application specifically mentions support for minority candidates," Rachel instructed. Mom always said talent shouldn't be blocked by barriers. From there, she drove to Brandon's barbershop. The space next door had been vacant for months, perfect for expansion. Her brother's hands shook slightly as she handed him the business plan she'd drafted. "A full training academy?" he asked, scanning the documents. "The community needs more Black-owned businesses teaching real skills," Rachel said. "You've already mentored so many kids informally. Now you can do it right." Over the next several weeks, reforms began. The scholarship is funded, and Rachel accepts a leadership role with a nursing equity nonprofit. The morning of the Reform Center unveiling, Rachel stood before her mirror, running her fingers through her growing hair. The natural coils were coming in strong, defiant, beautiful. She thought of her mother's hands styling her hair as a child, teaching her that appearance was about dignity, not submission. Mercy Regional's main auditorium was packed. Hospital staff filled most seats with nursing students along the back wall. Rachel spotted Carolyn near the front, proudly wearing her retirement whites, her head held high. Rebecca sat beside her, both women beaming as Rachel approached the podium. The new plaque behind her read, "The Bennett Center for Healthcare Equity and Reform." Below that, "Founded through the courage of those who refuse to be silenced." Rachel adjusted the microphone, taking in the faces before her, especially the young nurses, still early in their careers, still learning what battles lay ahead. "A few months ago, I stood in this hospital believing my career was over," she began. "Two doctors and an enabling administration thought they could humiliate me into silence. They assumed their power gave them the right to break people they saw as beneath them." She paused, letting the words settle. "But dignity isn't granted by institutions. It lives in us, in our refusal to accept abuse as normal, in our courage to name wrong as wrong, in our determination to protect those who come after us." Heads nodded throughout the audience. Several of the nursing students were wiping tears. "This center will ensure that no healthcare worker faces what I faced alone. We'll provide legal support, policy advocacy, and a strong voice for change. But most importantly, we'll teach what I learned. No one who tries to humiliate you gets to decide your future." Rachel's voice grew stronger. "They thought they could break me with clippers and cruelty. Instead, they broke their own power. They thought they could bury the truth with money and influence. Instead, they buried their own careers. They thought I would disappear in shame. Instead, I stand here ensuring they will be remembered only as a cautionary tale about the cost of unchecked arrogance." She looked directly at the nursing students. "Your skills matter. Your humanity matters. Your dignity matters. And if anyone tries to convince you otherwise, remember this. Justice may take time, but it comes for those who dare to demand it. Stand tall, document everything, find your allies, trust your worth. The people who try to diminish you fear your strength, and they should." The applause started with Carolyn and built until it filled the room. Rachel saw tears on some familiar faces, staff members who had watched silently during her ordeal, now cheering her victory. But she focused on the young nurses in the back, their eyes shining with inspiration and determination. They would face their own battles, but they would face them knowing that victory was possible. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like to support my channel and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. On the screen, I have picked two special stories just for you. Have a wonderful day. No matter how dark the hallway gets, never let anyone dim the light that lives inside you. Rachel Bennett's story reminds us that true strength isn't loud or flashy. It's the quiet decision to keep showing up when every voice around you says you should disappear. When two powerful doctors tried to strip away her dignity with cruelty and clippers, they thought they could break her spirit and silence her forever. What they didn't count on was the unbreakable core of a woman who refused to trade her worth for their comfort. Her courage teaches us that dignity is not something others can give or take. It is something we carry and defend with every breath. Even when the system closed ranks against her, when friends looked away and fear whispered to quit, Rachel chose truth over safety, justice over silence, and healing over bitterness. In the end, her stand didn't just change her own life. It cracked open doors for every person who comes after her. That is the quiet miracle of real courage. One person's refusal to be diminished becomes the beginning of freedom for many. So the next time life tries to shave away your confidence, your identity, or your voice, remember, Rachel. Stand tall, document everything, speak your truth anyway. Your dignity is worth the fight. What lesson from Rachel's journey touched you the most? Was it her unbreakable resilience, the power of quiet documentation, or the way she turned pain into purpose? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next powerful story that could change how you see your own strength. Your support keeps these important voices alive. Thank you for being here.